Hey there everyone, today I'm going to do another live review. This time it will be for Death Grips. Just quickly before I start, I just want to say I've got a bit of a cold, so if I sound any different, that's probably why. I've got kind of a blocked nose and that sort of thing. But hey, what can you do? Anyway, I saw Death Grips in Camden at the Electric Ballroom on the 7th of November, or 2 days ago, depending on when you're watching this. I actually ended up going to this on my own, because the only person that I could have possibly gone with out of my friends was up at uni, so that was kind of annoying. But anyway, by the time I got there, I actually did see two people that I see at loads of gigs, so I just chilled with them for the majority of the gig. Anyway, for quite some time, I've had my ticket booked, and I was really excited about seeing this gig, especially as I consider Death Grips to have a near-perfect discography. Firstly, I just want to quickly touch down on supports for a group like Death Grips. It's kind of an odd one because they are so unique and cover a fair few different genres within their music that who would you really pick to support Death Grips? I could personally quite easily see a hardcore punk band supporting them, maybe a drum and bass group, an ambient group, anything really along those sort of lines. I could quite easily see supporting Death Grips. However, the two supports that came were actually hip-hop groups in the end. The first one was a group called Rat King. They got announced very last minute, so I didn't actually get a chance to check them out, but I must say I was really impressed with what I saw. They made complete sense to support, and they had these really interesting instrumentals, lots of very jittery and frantic beats with electronics laid over the top in a similar fashion. They had a crazy amount of low-end bass and low-end frequencies. They consisted of two MCs and two DJs, and each person was moving around and making sure the energy was kept high. But the one thing I loved about their set was their main MC. Everything he did was very aggressive, and I really liked his flow. Also, in terms of personality, and to a degree his voice, he kind of reminded me of Zach from Rage Against the Machine, which was really nice. I really like Rage Against the Machine, so it was nice to hear that. They also used a couple of odd ways to make sounds. For example, they were breathing really sharply down the mic at one point. And also, the two MCs were really tight vocally. Pretty much everything they said was perfectly in time with themselves, and also were in time with the beat. Unfortunately, the place was pretty empty at this point. They started really early, but I still really enjoyed the set, and I'll definitely be checking them out, and since then have actually checked out a couple of their songs. The next band up were The Bug. At this point, the crowd had sort of packed out a bit more, and the group opened with just the DJ, and he created some really interesting sounds, including a solid 2 to 3 minutes of ambience before the set. However, the main meat of their set was taken up by two MCs, one male and one female. However, they were never actually on stage at the same time, it was just one or the other. I felt like the male MC was actually a better frontman, but he had a kind of generic flow and voice, and I wasn't digging his lines really all that much. The female MC had a lot more personality and was quite the opposite. I thought she was a great MC, but just wasn't that great a frontwoman. She sort of danced in one spot and didn't really say a great deal. I felt like the music itself just wasn't that interesting. It was a lot more straightforward. And sure, it got people moving, it was nice, but it was mostly very bassy noises and sort of very thick synths with nothing necessarily that interesting over the top and just kind of some average beats. It kind of had a slightly chilled vibe to it with all the electronics, but I still wasn't really enjoying it all that much, to be perfectly honest. At the end of the Bug set, the stage was set up for Death Grips. They essentially had two small screens, which I think the best way to describe them would be they were essentially large iPads without touchscreens. The only other thing that needed to be set up was Zach Hill's incredibly cut down and minimalist drum kit. He literally just had a snare drum, a kick drum and a floor tom. Just the three in a triangle on stage. Death Grips entered with Zach Hill walking on the stage, taking off his shirt and just pummeling his drum kit. It was absolutely crazy. It was just a frantic blur of snare rolls, kick patterns and tom accents. This dude can play seriously blisteringly fast. And obviously, he doesn't really get much of a chance to show off on record, but he more than makes up for it live. While this flurry of drums was just assaulting our eardrums, MC Ride came onto the stage looking as beastly and terrifying as ever, and they kicked straight in to Come Up and Get Me. And from the word go, the crowd just went for it. However, also from the word go, MC Ride just gave off this super intense stage presence and moving around the stage like some kind of beast, screaming his lyrics at the top of his lungs. Throughout the set, MC Ride just looked pretty goddamn terrifying. Take the energy he gives us on record and turn it up by about 10 times the amount and you might be able to imagine what he was like in the skin. However, what I didn't expect was actually my personal favourite person to watch was Zach Hill. He just well and truly got into these songs and jammed the fuck out of these songs. He can just hit stupidly hard and you could really feel the drums in your chest throughout the entire set. One definite highlight was the song No Love, which if you haven't already heard it, is a song that has one of the most hard-hitting beats I have ever heard on a hip-hop song. And Zach Hill just let loose on this track, on his floor tom. Throughout the entire set he got very into all the songs, but at this one point during the song No Love, he just picked up his floor tom and threw it across the stage while playing the song with the bass drum and the snare. Some of the other songs Zach Hill really shined on was stuff like Guillotine, and surprisingly Tachyon too. One thing I found really odd was that they played every single song one after the other, taking no breaks whatsoever, and not muttering a single word until the very end of the set, where MC Ride simply said the words, "Thank you." But I actually thought this added to the aesthetic that Def Grips tries to portray as a whole thing. The whole thing was one of the most intense shows I have ever witnessed on a stage. It was a really awesome experience, an incredibly bizarre one, and like anything to do with Def Grips, it just felt bigger than the band itself. Everything this group does just feels bigger. Everything from the ARG, to their sound, to their shows. Also, on another quick note, their DJ Flatlander was not actually there, which I was expecting because I'd heard that he wasn't at any of their recent shows. As far as I'm aware, no one knows why, but even that kind of adds to the Def Grips aesthetic, just kind of mysterious and unexplained a lot of the time. On the whole, it was a great gig. I had loads of fun and discovered a great new band, and Def Grips were just a trip to watch, so I really enjoyed myself. I felt like The Bug deserved about a 5 out of 10 for their performance. Was pretty average. Rat King earned themselves a 7 out of 10 with a really enjoyable, perhaps underdeveloped performance at times, but I would definitely give Def Grips an 8 out of 10 for their terrifying, intense and trippy show. If you like the video, make sure to like, comment and subscribe. Let me know what you lot think of Def Grips and their performances if you've actually seen them, and I'll catch you guys and gals later.